Hey guys, it's Tahira, and it's been a while. And the only reason it's been a while is because I've been at college and my college is out of state, so I did take my camera with me, but my roommate, it's just a little more awkward to film when your roommate's in the room, so I didn't really get a chance to while I was there. But yeah, I didn't get to film, but I was able to read while I was there. So today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I have read in the past basically semester of my life, so like around 4 or 5 months. Basically all the books that I've read since the month of August. So actually my reading slowed down a lot while I was at college because I got a lot more busier and just didn't get a chance to read as much as I usually would in high school. So I actually read like 10 books in the past, like since August, which I feel like is not a lot, but I don't know, it is what it is. And honestly, a lot of these books I kind of forgot about because it's been so long since I've read them, but I'm gonna try my best to go through all of these books. So the first book that I read in the month of August was The One by Kiera Cass, which is the third book in the Selection trilogy. And I know it's not a trilogy, but I don't really like the last two books, so I kind of consider this a 3-book series because the last two books are just in my mind, they don't even exist. But yeah, The One is the final book, and The Selection, everyone knows, is a super popular series following a girl named America, and she basically becomes a part of the selection where like 34 girls go and the prince is trying to find a bride in all of those girls. It's basically like The Bachelor, but like in a royal setting, and I think it's a really fun series. The reason I was rereading this over the summer is because I think a TV show is coming out for the series, and a lot of people were just talking about the series because of it, and it made me want to reread it. So I was rereading it all summer, and I finally got to this book in August. I give this book 3 stars. It wasn't the best, but it also was just a fun book. One of the reasons why I kind of docked the stars because in the first and second book, especially the second book, her feelings are very, very confused. She's very confused about who she loves because it's between Maxon and Aspen. But in this book, she kind of just magically figures everything out. And I don't know, just that whole thing just kind of felt very abrupt. And it also felt like there was no tension. We kind of knew that everything was going to work out. I guess because it is a YA novel from 2014, but it just felt like there should have been a little bit more tension. Just to bring that like conclusion, like, you know, the tension that you want in a conclusion. I felt like that wasn't really there. The next book that I actually finished in August, but I started in like March, I want to say, and that is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I gave a 1 out of 5 stars. So I rarely give any book 1 star. So if I give a book 1 star, it really means that I did not like it at all. And that was unfortunately the case for me with this book because it just wasn't what I was expecting. And the fact that it took me 6 months to read this book, just like, it should give you a clue as to like how much I didn't like it. For some reason, like, because it's like a dystopian, I was expecting it to be very fast-paced and a lot of like action going on, and it's very much the opposite of that. It's very mundane and very following like everyday life for these handmaidens. So for me, it was very boring because at first it was interesting to read about how their life is, but that's what the entire book was, and it just kept getting repetitive and boring. And majority of the book was like this, like very boring and mundane and repetitive. And then it got interesting for me at the end of the book because that's when kind of like a little more of the action started happening. So that's the only part that I guess I enjoyed. But other than that, I felt like I was just expecting a different book than I was getting, and that kind of tainted my reading experience for this, which I'm kind of sad about because this is a very, very popular novel and it's kind of a classic, and there's even a TV show for this, and I'm interested in watching the TV show just to see how they adapted this book onto the screen. It might be a little more interesting for me because obviously with a TV show, the people have to add a little more action, otherwise the viewers would get bored. So I just want to see like how they went about doing that. But yeah, I'm very disappointed that I did not like this book because there's just so much hype for it and so many people love it, and I really wanted to also love it, but I just didn't. The next book that I read was Rooftops of Tehran by Mahabodh Sarajee. So this book I actually got a really long time ago at a library book sale, and the reason I picked it up was because my mom told me to get it. She was like, oh, you should diversify your reading tastes and read other than just your young adult books. So she gave me this book to read, and I finally got around to reading it this year. So Rooftops of Tehran follows 17-year-old Pasha Shahed, and he spends the summer summer of 1973 on the rooftops with his friend Ahmed talking about the future. Pasha also has to deal with his crush on his neighbor Zari, who he has to kind of wrestle with because she is engaged to someone else. And he starts a friendship with Zari and they kind of form a bond, but then one night Pasha acts as a beacon for the Shah secret police, and because of that night he and his friends realize what it's like to truly live under a powerful leader. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars and I was really surprised by actually how much I enjoyed it. It's not like I was expecting to hate it, it's just like I didn't know because it's not something that I really read usually, so I was just a little hesitant, but I actually really enjoyed this book. I absolutely love how the friendship was between these characters and the bond they just formed throughout the book was just so beautiful to see, and I just loved reading about it. The one thing that I found a little weird was that okay, I don't know if this is a spoiler, so I don't know if I can actually say this, but something happens and Zari and Pasha are able to be together, but I felt like after the thing that happened they just got together too quickly. Like, I don't know how to say it without spoiling the book, but it's just, yeah, I don't know, I feel like you'd understand this if you were reading it, but yeah, it felt a little weird that they got together a little too fast in my opinion. And there's a plot twist at the end and I don't really know how to feel about it. I think that's like one of the reasons why I gave it 4 stars and not 5 stars is because of that plot twist. But overall I really enjoyed this book, and just like the bonds that they formed, the friendship bonds and the relationship between Zari and Pasha it's just really innocent and cute and romantic, and I just really loved reading about it. The next book that I read while I was away at college was The Gracier by Kim Liggett. So The Gracier follows this world where girls have this like aphrodisiac magic power thing that's like being emitted from their body, which makes them irresistible to people. And then when these girls turn 16, they're kind of banished to like the woods for like a year so that they can like release their magic, so that when they come back they're pure and ready to be married. And the book follows our main character Tierney James, who is 16 years old, and she is part of this group of girls, and she basically wants a better world, a better life where girls aren't put against each other. I give The Gracier 3.5 out of 5 stars, so not too bad. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed also reading about the story of how the author got inspired to write this story, because she was in New York and she was at a train station and she saw this like preteen teenage girl that was just like standing there walking around, and she noticed how all the people around her were noticing her, especially men and sometimes even women, and she basically, I think, was inspired to write about this time in your life where you basically are youthful, like people I guess are attracted to you, I don't know, but like she was basically inspired by how people were reacting to this one girl at a train station, and so she decided to write the story based on that, which I think is cool. So yeah, I think the concept was really interesting, but I think the execution could have been a little better. It kind of got boring in the middle, like it just kind of got repetitive, things were just happening, and there's also kind of an insta-lovey romance that happens in this book, which I was not a huge fan of. It just felt unnecessary because, I don't know, it just felt like it just happened just so quickly and there was really no purpose, I feel like, other than just to add a romance into the story. I definitely think the book would have been better if there was no romance, because I really think the message of this book is to focus on these girls and just kind of finding themselves while they're away on their Gracier. And I also wanted an explanation of more of like what the world is like, and like the world outside of this like one village that we see. Like, is the whole world like this? Is it just this village? Is this every girl? Is this all girls in the world? Is this just the girls in this village? It's just, I had a lot of questions that I felt like weren't answered, and I wish they were. But overall, I think the concept was really interesting and I enjoyed some parts of the book. I think the writing was very beautiful at times, but I just wish that there was just a little more, and that the romance should have been cut out. The next book that I read was King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo, which I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This is the one that I'm probably most sad about, is because I was really looking forward to King of Scars, and I just, in general, I really like Leigh Bardugo's writing. I like her Gracier verse, even though it's not her favorite of my series, but like Six of Crows is one of my favorite books of all time, and just, yeah, like I like Leigh Bardugo, but this book just, I don't know, it just didn't click with me. I had to drag myself through the story, which you kind of never want to do when you're reading a book. I honestly don't remember much from the book, and I kind of forgot what happened, which I think should show you like I didn't really care about this book. So yeah, I don't really have a lot to say. I hope the second book is a little better. I will be picking up the second book because it's Leigh Bardugo and I want to give this series another chance. But if I don't like it, I feel like this series is just not for me. The next book that I read was Love Boat Taipei by Abigail Hing-wen. The Love Boat Taipei follows our main character Ever Wong, who is an 18-year-old girl living in Ohio, and her parents sent her off to Taiwan for the summer to learn Mandarin, but what they don't know is that they're actually sending her to like this crazy teen summer camp called Love Boat. And this summer camp is for those kids that are overachieving, but they're more into clubbing than they are into learning. Yeah, Ever kind of goes into this and she's kind of learning all about this world of Love Boat and just finding herself basically. I give this book 3.75 out of 5 stars. I think it was a fun story and overall I enjoyed it. There was an underlying message in this book of like finding yourself because her parents want her to be a doctor but Ever herself wants to be a dancer. So she kind of goes to Love Boat and kind of starts discovering more about herself away from her parents and realizes what she wants in life. But I like that message of finding yourself, which I find can be a message for a lot of books that center around characters from ethnic backgrounds or who have immigrant parents, but it did get a little cringy sometimes. And there was also some cheating, like emotional cheating and physical cheating that was never really resolved, and there was also some like there's a case of like revenge porn which also was never really resolved. So I wish that kind of there was a little discussion about that because there really wasn't. It also felt like sometimes that the author was trying to talk about a lot of like heavy topics such as like, again, the topic of like having expectations of your immigrant parents and mental illness and stuff like that, but just didn't go too in depth into those topics. So it just kind of felt rushed. I feel like the author could have gone in depth more into those topics and I felt like that would have made the story a lot more interesting. But overall, I think it was a fun story about just finding yourself in a new place, learning more about your culture, and just overall having a good time. The next book that I read, I do have a copy of all these books, but they're actually back in my dorm at college, so I just have to show you the pictures. But the next book that I read was 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khalid Husseini, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book so much. I think I liked this more than Kite Runner, and I did like Kite Runner. I think I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars, but just I loved 1,000 Splendid Suns is so much more. I really don't know what to say, but I just loved the writing, the story, and the characters. I felt a lot more connected to the characters. Not that I could relate to them in any way because I can't, but just like I enjoyed reading about them more, learning about their stories and their lives. It was just a lot more interesting for me to read than the Kite Runner. I also feel like it's a lot harder to talk about books that you like because you just like everything about them. It's a lot easier to pinpoint what you didn't like than to talk about what you did like. So that's why I don't have a lot to say about this book, but just know I really, really loved it. The next book is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi, and I was rereading this because I wanted to read A Children of Virtue and Vengeance. So originally, Children of Blood and Bone was one of my favorite books of last year, not last year. Definitely a couple years ago, but it was definitely on one of my favorite lists for like when I make yearly favorite videos, and I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and unfortunately when I did my reread this time I didn't love it as much. I haven't done it on Goodreads, but I actually think I'm gonna lower my rating from 5 stars to 4 stars, which is really sad. I don't know if it was the environment I was in or like the time. I don't know what was going on in my life, but it just like I couldn't focus when I was reading it. I was distracted a lot. I felt like I had to drag myself through the story, and it was just complete opposite of the reading experience I had when I first read it, because obviously when I first read it I really, really loved it because it was on my favorites list. But this time, yeah, I just didn't love it as much. Don't get me wrong, it's a good story. For some reason this time my brain just couldn't focus while reading it. And I don't know if it was because it was a reread and like my brain already knew the story, so it didn't want to read it. It was weird, but yeah, I just didn't enjoy this reread as much. But after Children of Blood and Bone, I read Children of Virtue and Vengeance, which I gave 3 stars. I was a little less distracted reading this than I was with Children of Blood and Bone, but obviously I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. It wasn't the sequel that I was hoping for. Yeah, I don't know what it was about the story. I don't know if it's like I just don't like it anymore, but it's just, yeah, I just wasn't enjoying it when I was reading it. So that's a little bit sad. Also, something about Children of Blood and Bone that I noticed was that it felt a lot longer when I was reading it this time, and when I was reading it, I definitely saw there were a lot of parts that could have been cut down to make the book a little shorter. I think that would have helped the story a little more. But yeah, reading these two books was just not the enjoyable experience that I wanted it to be. And the last book that I read, that I actually just finished, like this is the most recent book that I finished, and that is Tempests and Slaughter by Tamara Pierce. I forgot the dust jacket at my college dorm, so it's just the hardback for now, but I give this book around 3 stars. I really like the characters of the book. My only problem was that there's literally no plot. Like, the book lacked direction and it just lacked a whole plot, and it was just kind of a day-to-day life of our main characters and their lives, basically. Oh, also, this book follows our main character Aram Draper, who is a powerful mage, and he's kind of learning how to be a mage at this like magic school. So basically the book follows him and his 2 friends Ozorn and Varys. I have no idea. I feel like I'm saying those names completely wrong, but yeah, it just follows those 3 as they're kind of going through their studies at this school. Yeah, this was kind of an interesting read because there's a lot of world building, just like setting up the world and the magic system, which I feel can be helpful because I know that Tamara Pierce has this whole like chronicles thing that's going on where she has like, I think they're all like the same world. So I definitely could have read previous books to kind of get a little more sense of the world, but I think that she also set it up well in this book. And I don't think reading the other books is necessary. I've heard it's helpful, but I didn't because there's just a lot of books in this whole world. But I think what this book, and I saw a lot of other people agreeing, is that this book is very much a setup for what's to come in the future, and I think that I'm definitely interested in picking up the future books because I think there's a lot of potential with this series. But what I also found interesting is although it was very slow, there was no plot, it was just their everyday lives at this school, I didn't hate reading it. As opposed to a book like Children of Blood and Bone, where I felt like I was dragging myself through the story, and even though Children of Blood and Bone is a very action-packed, fast-paced book, like I was still dragging myself through it and I didn't want to read it. And this is like the opposite. This is like a very slow everyday life kind of book, but I didn't have to be like, oh, I didn't have to force myself to read this book, and I still enjoyed reading about their everyday lives. Like, I don't know, it's weird because I am very much of a plot person, so I love plot and I like things to be fast-paced and action-packed, but I think that after reading Children of Blood and Bone, I kind of enjoyed the experience of slowing down a bit and getting to know these characters really well. So yeah, very interesting reading experience, and I'm very interested in picking up the other books in the future to see what they're like because I'm pretty sure they're gonna be interesting. Anyway, those are all 10 books that I read in the past 4 months of my life. I definitely read a lot less than I usually do. Like if I was in high school, I probably would have read double the books that I've read so far, but you know what, it's okay. College is different. College is harder. It's a lot more work, and I think that I'm fine with it. Anyway, that is it for this video. Let me know down below what's your favorite book that you've read in like recent times, I guess, as I would love to know. But that is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.